Okay, so in this tutorial, let's zero some of this stuff out. All right, so what we've done here is constrained the placement control, which is hiding underneath the floor there, so that it is running along with this locator. The locator is right there, right? So, again, the whole idea was, we're isolating some of the constraint functions. There's lots of different ways to approach this. I just personally like to kind of separate things as much as I can in this setup. Let's go 5.6, a little texture there. So that if I need to do anything with this controller, right, so this little controller down here, this is the placement controller. If I want to do anything with it, like animate it away from this curve, or in this instance, we want to constrain it to the pillar so that the little bouncy ball here sticks with it, then we can do that, right? So in this tutorial, we just want to cover how to take and add a parent constraint and basically toggle one on and off, so that it sticks to one thing at one part of the animation, and then it switches over to obey something else during another part of the animation. So let's go ahead and do that. And so this is a file I had worked up in class, so there's already some animation. You can see, I did a little squash and stretch here at a few places. There's no squash and stretch right there, right? A little more here. Does a little... right, and so then it comes up and it's going to stretch and land and kind of collect itself and roll along the top, but obviously it's not in sync with the pillar. And again, the whole idea is that when we do some of these things, if we were going to change it, we wouldn't want to do this by hand because we'd have to change every single keyframe if we do something different, or we need to slow it down or change the rocking motion of the pillar, right? So let's go ahead and look at how to do this. So the important thing is, I've unfolded this in the outliner. We're using the ball placement control. And again, that's sitting just underneath the floor here. It's right on that plane. So just keep that in mind. But I'm going to select it over here in the outliner. And the one thing that's happened is when we created the constraint, you can actually see it here. It's a child now of the ball placement control. So ball placement control parent constraint. And we can also see this over, excuse me, in these inputs for the shape. It has this information. There's a bunch of blah, 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 rotation, decomposition, target, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about this. The thing that's a little weird here, so locator 1 L0, or basically this means it's constrained to the locator. It's the weight of it, so that's what the W is, I believe. And the 0 just means it's counting, so it knows that we might add other constraints to it. So 0 in computer counting is the first one. So what we're going to do is add another one. What we need to do is figure out when this switch is going to happen, right? So 266, 267. All right, 268 is that first connection. So it's 267. I'm going to turn this. This is going to be the last part that it stays on the locator here, and then I'm going to switch it back to a new constraint here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add that new constraint. There's lots of different ways you could do this, but I'm going to just go ahead and add that. So what I'm going to do is, in this hierarchy, we have the pillar with its front and back little locators, right? And then the pillar itself is a child. It actually has a little object that's hidden up here in case we wanted to use that, but this will be fine. We want to constrain it to the pillar so that if we rock any of these two little pivot points that we've created for it with locators, then we want it to obey the whole entire thing, not just the top or the front or the back pivots, right? So what we're going to do is select the pillar itself, and then I'm going to hold down pillar, and that's command on the Mac, control on the PC. And we're going to go ahead and add another constraint. So as always, when I go up to constraint, I'm in the animation kind of submenu. Animation, constraint, I'm always going to choose this option for parent. Let's just reset the settings. So as a default, maintain offset is turned on. We turned it off earlier because we wanted the ball placement control to be right where the locator was, right? We didn't want to have it rotating along, excuse me, at a different place. But in this case, we do. We want the pillar here, and we don't want that placement controller to move to snap to the origin or that, the pivot of the pillar. We want it to stay relative to that, right? So maintaining the offset means, okay, it's going to move, but it will move, this is going to stay down here, and the pillar, imagine this like an L, right? And the whole thing's going to rock and rotate. It's at this moment right now I realize how much I use my hands when explaining things in class. So if you could see me during this tutorial, I'd be doing little hand gestures of showing how these work together, right? So anyways, we'll play along, right? So again, in the order here is the thing that's going to do the controlling is the pillar, and then I'm going to hit Command and click so that I select this, the thing that's going to get controlled or constrained. And I'll go ahead and keep the maintain offset on in this instance, and I'll hit Apply and close that. And so what you see here is that both of these are on at this point because they say 1. Okay, so it's a set amount of what this is. It didn't add a new constraint, it's just added a new input to this idea that a constraint is being applied, and there's actually multiple versions of that coming in. So when I want it to be at the, in fact, let's back up one right here. I'm going to go to 267. So at the very beginning, I want the locator here to be on. I'm going to do key selected, and this one actually I want to be off. When I go to 268, I'm just going to reverse the 2. So that's 0 and that's 1. Right, so let's just back up a frame. You can see that now it's off. Well, one's on, one's off. We go forward 1 frame, we switch that, and now as we start to toggle through there, you can see that the ball is now fixed to that. It's a little subtle, right? So it's just, oops, object mode. So that's just turning on and off. Now in this instance, because the parent controller is down here and it's not going anywhere, this little switch is pretty easy to make happen, right? So you can see that it's that placement controller, we didn't hand keyframe that, we just made it stick with the locator and do whatever the locator's doing. And then here does its little bounce, right? And now you can see as it hits, you can see that it's rocking with it, right? So that's how the constraint works. As you would imagine, there's multiple ways to turn these on and off, or have, as I demonstrated in class, you got to half a dozen objects and put an object in the center of them and do constraint, and the object at the center would proportionally try to move between these 6 constrainers, constraining objects. Based on them trying to share the weighting here. And then obviously we can turn some on and off as we go along. Okay, hopefully that's helpful.